Alright, hey there hunters, Lord here, back with another Monster Hunter Wilds video. Today we had a very long stream, almost an hour and a half if I remember correctly, cataloging all the changes that they're planning to make to the full build of Monster Hunter Wilds for the day 1 release. So this is just a quick community update, so I wanted to go ahead and kind of cut it down in size to something a little more manageable than sitting through almost an hour and a half of the stream. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So we're going to be starting off with the PlayStation performance. They showed a brief clip of how PlayStation is looking in the current build, so I'll go ahead and play that for you now. So up first, they wanted to talk about the differences between the graphic prioritization and the frame rate prioritization on the PS5. If you're prioritizing graphics, you're going to get very close to 4K natural resolution at 30 frames per second at their target frame. They said they can hit this pretty consistently, which is good to hear. And if you decide to prioritize frame rate, which I know I like to do, the rendering resolution will be at 1080p, but it will be upscaled to 4K in near lossless quality at 60 FPS. They said that it's running at or near 60 FPS. Of course, this will change in some higher load situations with big monster herds and whatnot, but that's good to hear, and it was good to see that clip looking a lot better. Up next, we have the Xbox stuff. Again, very similar. On your Series X, you're going to get very similar to the PlayStation 5 stuff, and on your Series S, you're going to be running at 1080p around 30 FPS. They did also say that they are going to be including PlayStation 5 Pro support at full release, which will give even better results than this right here. So that's good to hear as well for any PS5 Pro users out there. I know I personally haven't picked one up because I'm just happy with my regular PS5 and I'm not spending another $800 on that. For the Steam requirements, again, it says it will vary depending on your hardware and settings. However, they did state that they are looking to decrease the minimum specs needed for your PC in order to allow more hunters access to the game at launch. The performance, once again, on the current build of the game is leaps and bounds ahead of the open beta test build that we all got to play. Again, that open beta test was diverged from the main game a very long time ago, very early in 2024, so they have not gotten to make the changes in the open beta test for performance that they're making on the live build, as they're not really considering that a full splice of the game. They're just calling that a little cut of the game, and so there's not much there that has been changed, but on the full build, they've been listening to our feedback and they've made a ton of changes. Up next, we have some gameplay changes. Overall, the adjustment of hit stop and sound effects has been greatly changed to give weapon attacks a more weighty and impactful feel, especially those big moves and finishers. So here, I'm going to go ahead and show you the hit stop effects that they showed have been added to the new build of Wilds, and then I will play a clip that I will record real quick of those same hit stop effects in Monster Hunter World, so you can kind of compare and contrast and feel just how much meatier those attacks are looking from the open beta test of Wilds. They also have talked quite extensively about the mitigation of friendly fire. It has been greatly reduced for most weapons in the open beta test, namely gun lance and hammer. You can entirely reduce friendly fire effects with the shockproof jewel, which will be making its return from Sunbreak back into Monster Hunter Wilds. Here's a short clip of the hammer upswings being changed, so they no longer launch, they just trip. So pretty much everything is longsword now. So they decided to make these changes due to many attacks having a significantly larger range of impact than they have in previous games, and they didn't want new hunters to the series to be discouraged by getting blown away from something like the Gunlance Wyvern Fire or these Hammer Up charges. Many veterans, including myself, aren't really a huge fan of this change, but the devs felt that it was necessary with Wilds to make it accessible to so many more people, as it has a way broader chance of reaching new hunters than any of the previous titles. They wanted hunters of all skill levels to be able to enjoy the game in multiplayer without having to constantly worry about being thrown around the map by attacks that they couldn't even see coming from miles away. Some further changes that were made is the frequency at which monsters change areas. They've greatly reduced that in the full version of Monster Hunter Wilds. It's going to be much more akin to the frequency at which monsters change areas in Monster Hunter Worlds, which is just great to hear. It was really frustrating. I had big issues with that, so far most of my complaints have been addressed, which is good to see. They want us to be able to utilize the pop-up camp feature to help catch up to monsters that are limping away. So there's going to be more of an emphasis on planning and strategizing your overall map setup. Now up next we have some changes to the Insect Glaive. They have added the vaulting dance to help strengthen aerial action. This includes access to many different combos and the aerial power increasing the more that you keep yourself in the air. The new move, the Descending Slash, has had an offset attack added to it, which gives hunters much more variety in their overall moveset. I think this is a great addition. Insect Glaive is already very strong. They were saying that they had a journalist come playtest it in the studio in Japan, and he said that it was the most fun Insect Glaive that he had played in any Monster Hunter game. And they're looking to just continue building on that, so the offset attack is a great addition in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The Kinsect effects have had their old buffs included in the full game, like wind pressure, tremor, and roar mitigation. Again, this is just great. Hopefully they will include its synergy with flinch free from previous games, where the more flinch free you have, the more effective your buffs are at blocking that wind pressure, those tremors, and those roars. Lance has also seen some balancing changes, which is good. It definitely needed it. If you haven't seen my weapon balancing video from the open beta test, I'll leave a link to that in the top right now, as well as down in the description. So check it out. There's some big discrepancies, and Lance definitely needed some changes. So they've added the charge counter, which allows guarding while you charge it and can be chained into from any other move in the Lance's arsenal. Again, this is just going to be great for overall Lance fluidity of play and being able to use multiple combos instead of just being shoehorned into a single repeatable combo. The Power Guard now charges to its higher levels faster upon successfully guarding against more powerful monster attacks. This is good. Again, a damage buff is exactly what Lance needed, so this, plus hopefully the addition of Offensive Guard in the full game, will help bring Lance up that list quite a bit and more in tune with the other melee weapons. In addition, the Perfect Guard and Power Guard can now be chained into a new move, so I'll go ahead and show you some clips from the Lance gameplay that they showed in the stream today so you can check it out for yourself. Up next is another weapon that needed some significant buffs, which is the Switch Axe. So the Switch Axe has had some changes made to the swapping between sword and axe mode, especially after building up the axe mode gauge to make it a little more satisfying to get into sword mode. That's a good change. It definitely needed it for sure. There's really not much reason to be in sword mode except to do the full release slash, which immediately sent you back to axe mode, and axe mode needed to land attacks to get sword mode built back up. And so hopefully this will make that a little less tedious and you'll be able to spend some more time in sword mode dealing a little more damage than we were doing in the open beta test. They've made some improvements to various moves, including the full release slash. These should just be general buffs to motion values, which again will help bring Switch Axe more in line with the other weapons, as it was pretty bad in the open beta test, to be honest. They've also negated knockback when using the full release slash. Since this was our highest damaging move in the open beta test, a lot of people were spamming this. So again, I don't think this is a terrible choice overall to do. However, I do think that there is a lot of learning to position yourself and to position when you have a fellow Switch Axe user in a hunt with you to make sure that you're not getting sent flying. So, it's a little positive, little negative, but overall, I don't think it's too bad. Up next, we have changes to yet another weapon that was pretty low on the power curve, which is the Sword and Shield. Something a lot of people were asking about is the rising slash while guarding, so they have added that, which is a great change. Normal attacks and perfect rush are all being buffed, which is good because basically you are just spamming charged chop to get optimal damage, and that's pretty boring. Again, we don't want it to get to a point where we have to spam perfect rush like we have in previous games, so hopefully this will just kind of bring it more in line with charged chop, allowing for, again, more variety in your weapon's moveset. They've also overall increased the weapon responsiveness, which is just a good thing. Being able to chain those combos and not miss inputs is very important for optimal sword and shield play. And finally, they improved the evasion effectiveness of the backstep and sliding swipe. This will give you a chance to create more space by using those moves rather than just dodge rolling away. You could use the backstep to hop away from an attack and then immediately punish that attack, like you'll see in this next clip. And now we have kind of our first really balance where they're not buffing the weapon to make it as good as other weapons, which is bow. Bow is being tuned down a little bit, and rather than just nerfing it into oblivion, they have decided that it makes more sense to buff the weaker aspects of the bow and just bring down the more powerful aspects so that way it's all in line. That seems to be the general design philosophy here of the dev team. They stated today in the live stream that the developers' balancing philosophy is not just to drag down the things that are good in Monster Hunter Wilds, but to buff the weapon attacks that are underpowered to make all moves as equally viable as they can, allowing for, again, more variety in your combat, which is just always going to be a good thing. Nobody really likes just spamming the same move over and over and over again. You want to be able to use your normal attacks as much as your special attacks, and so I think that this is a great thing to hear from the devs. The normal shots and the arc shots are being buffed, while the tracer shots are being tuned down just a little bit to make them all relatively equally effective. Again, this is great. The tracer shots were super strong, and you almost always had to have them going, otherwise you weren't dealing optimal damage in the open beta. So overall, we're very happy to see that. The second change that they've made to the bow is that the focus strike targeting has been slowed down a bit. Initially, when you would go into the focus strike, it would target all wounds basically instantly, allowing you to get this attack off extremely quickly, and it's definitely one of the strongest in the game, as you can see here. The bow focus strike will target one wound at a time with a brief delay in between each wound's targeting, as you can see here. Now, the other weapons, like Hunting Horn, are receiving general changes, not necessarily buffs, to things like skills, elemental values, hit detection, and the lower damage output that some of those weapons had, to bring them more in line with the overall power curve. And this is all, again, a part of their aim to make every weapon feel good to use in the full game, the end game, without feeling like you're handicapping yourself by playing your favorite weapon. Tokita said that the Hunting Horn's melody effects in the full game were definitely too strong, notably attack up large. He said that this wasn't a huge issue in the open beta test because, again, it's just a small snippet of the full game. But once you start to get those bigger melodies and those endgame hunting horns, they really felt like it made hunting horn a must-have secondary weapon, and they didn't want that to be the case. They wanted people to play hunting horn because they love hunting horn, not because they have to. They've made the melodies that buff yourself a little bit stronger overall, which is good, but the effects that are given to your teammates have been reduced just a bit. Now, the biggest change that they've made is that when you swap back to your other weapon from the hunting horn, the melody effects will not last as long. So this way, you're more incentivized to stay on the hunting horn rather than to just use it quickly to buff yourself and your party and then swap back to your main weapon. Overall, I think this is a good change. I'm not sure how you hunting horn mains feel about this one, so let me know down in the comments, but I think that it's good that they want to make sure that hunting horn gets the recognition that it deserves, rather than it just being used like, you know, a demon drug or something where you just quick use it at the beginning of the hunt to buff yourself and you don't think about it again. Now, the skill system has undergone some significant changes here in Monster Hunter Wilds. As you can see, the skills for certain weapons are now affixed directly to those weapons, as you can see with the speed sharpening on the Hope Blade 2 here. We now know that as you upgrade along the weapon tree, you won't lose this original skill, which is very good. As you can see here, you'll actually gain new skills, or you can gain additional levels of original skills. Weapons and armors will still have slots. As you can see here, there's none in this one, but there's room for them. This will allow for further set customization using decorations, and it should allow for multiple weapons. Like if you look along this side, these are going to be kind of your higher tier weapons, instead of just one of them being the outright best for every scenario. Fatalis weapons. We should have many more options for different scenarios. So instead of taking the same weapon for every hunt, you'll want to swap up weapons on a per hunt basis, which is just overall a good thing. It attributes to a better endgame grind, and more variety is always better, as we've talked about with weapon movesets, as we've talked about with weapons, as we've talked about with armors. Having the ability to change things up and not feel like you're nerfing yourself actively is just a great thing in general. So another thing that Tokuda-san spoke about were the multiplayer aspects of Monster Hunter Wilds. There are things that were different from what we saw in the past in the open beta test that left many of the community having quite a few questions about how things would work. There will be many features in the full game that were not included in the open beta, including things like private lobbies like we saw in World and Rise, where only people with your specific code will be able to join. The squad system is returning, as well as squad lobbies, making it even easier to hunt with your friends and hunting party overall, which is just a great thing to hear. Some of the features in the open beta test, namely the link parties and environmental link, were not super well understood by many of us, and Tokuda-san confirmed that these features will be much more stable in the full game. The environmental link basically allows your party to tie up exactly how the environment is going to be. So if you're on different maps, you could have completely different weather conditions, and so using this environmental link will allow you to all have the same conditions, making picking a monster to fight even easier. So if you were unsynchronized, it would be difficult to find a specific monster, as it may be on one person's map and not on the others. This was harder for them to show in the beta test, as there was only one map, the Windward Plains, active anyway, and the differing effects were harder to show since there's only 3 weather seasons in the open beta test. Essentially, the features for multiplayer will make a lot more sense in the full release of Monster Hunter Wilds, and they will have a more dedicated note section on how each of those works, allowing us to better understand it and utilize those features. They're also doing work to ensure that the chat and sticker spam is reduced in the full game, allowing you to mute people that you find to be spammy, and other options to make communication with your specific party within these large lobbies a bit more streamlined. Take, for example, if you start a quest, only the people in the quest will be able to chat with you, and the rest of the lobby will be muted, allowing for more effective communication. They also stated they're looking to make the weapon-specific UI, like you would see in the top corner, a bit better, giving you more options for sizing. So if you felt like the Charge Blade UI was a bit too small and you couldn't quite tell what was going on, is my shield charged, is my sword charged, is it not? They want to give you the option to make it fit a little better to your liking in the full game. They also spoke that in future title updates, they will be looking to make even more improvements to the weapon-specific UI, which is just great overall, as it definitely needs it. Now, there were many more small changes that they mentioned in passing or just in chatting during the stream, so if you're interested in seeing more, I'll be sure to link the full live stream down below, so definitely go check that out. If you did enjoy today's video or found it helpful, a like is super appreciated. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. We've just surpassed 20,000 subs. I can't thank you guys enough. It's super awesome to see the support on the channel. Here's to many more in Monster Hunter Wilds. I cover sets, guides, speedruns, tutorials, and so much more. And the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that is to be subscribed. With all that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I wish you all a good day and happy hunting.